Hello, everyone. I'm Russell Gay, Associate Professor of Management, David W. Wilson, Chair of Business Ethics. Welcome back to the Faculty and Staff Ethics Interview Series. Joined today with Dr. Saif Bhuiyan. Saif is in his third year at UNI as a professor in the Management Department, focusing on MIS. His PhD is from Arkansas. Before that, he was a professor for several years in Bangladesh. Saif, welcome aboard. I look forward to talking to you more today.
Thank you, Rusty, for having me. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. So let's kind of start off with the academic side, whether that's teaching, research, service, whatever component of it you might want to be. But let's just kind of start talking about this notion of business ethics or ethics in the classroom, the academic side of ethics, wherever you want to start off.
So I will start with the background pretty early. So you know, I am from Bangladesh.
Yes.
That's where I was born. And when we were students, I went to a school which is slightly different than the regular schools system. But a lot of school systems actually have a lot of ethical issues in Bangladesh.
Sure.
It happens, say, that almost every year there is this 10th grade and 12th grade exams, and some of those exams get leaked to the students, and you could buy them for a cup of coffee. So that was, and I was a victim of that, because they used to have about 7 or 8 sets of questions that they would prepare. So if something leaks, that they would provide the next set.
Sure.
Usually the first set is the more feasible set. But whenever it leaked, then they went to second and third set. In my 10th grade exam, that was the third set. So the 10th grade exam was extremely hard because that was a completely backup option. And that happens even until today. So sure. Cheating in academia was a rampant problem. Not so much with the students, I would say, but there is a culture that somehow, I don't know, it was probably something to do with the British leaving some sort of culture with us where, you know, the people who wanted to be in favor of the British tried to cheat their way in, and then somehow that stayed with them. I have no proof for that, but sure, I have a feeling that that's probably where it started. So I had a lot of interest in that going in. And when I was an undergraduate student, I basically left my country, so I did not see some of that. My wife studied there, her undergraduate, so she was again in her bachelor, because in Bangladesh they do nationalized exams. So in her second year and third year, she also had to go for third or fourth set. So that was a problem, and so I actually took on this issue as soon as I started teaching in Bangladesh.
Okay.
So it was around 2011 when I started teaching, and I took a very hard stand about you know, not having any cheating going on in my classes. And it was tough. It was tough because students, and
very much so, the
culture itself is very hard, because it's like a no big deal. The point is everybody else is doing it. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And I was given the look, you know, it's like, oh, you graduated from US, so are you trying to give us that, you know, and that kind of created some problems, but I you know, fought hard. So when I started my PhD at University of Arkansas, and one of my very close professors, he was working on ethics and how we can use information systems to help students get better with ethics and stuff. Because at least from their point of view, it was more about learning and knowing what's wrong and what's right.
Okay.
I kind of take a different take on that. I don't think that it's always about what's right and what's wrong. I think that it's about opportunity. But in any event, so we used a software where they used to take a training program. So we used that as a pre and post test, and see that, you know, their attitude towards cheating in general and ethics in general would improve. So we did see significant improvement. Again, like any other self-reported surveys, sure, there is that underlying problem that that is hard to ignore. But I think that perhaps we can teach them. That's what I think. Perhaps we can teach them because it's also cultural, because like if you go to China or if you go to some of the Asian countries, sometimes I am helping my friend. You know, you don't look at it saying, okay, I helped my friend is not ethical because it's his or her task and not yours.
Yeah.
And you are helping them is not helping them. You should
Yeah.
help them in a different work. You should help
Exactly.
them where you're, you know, doing group projects.
Mhm.
But that's a very much, that's a phenomenon that we can't ignore. I mean, especially in Asia, I think even in Japan, Malaysia, China, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, there is that attitude. There is also a mentality from parents
Okay.
that I am helping my child.
Ah,
So they're coming home, they ask the dad, can you help me? They get so used to it in first grade, second grade, third grade, they forget that now their kids are in college
mhm.
and they're supposed to do those critical thinking questions on their own,
Right.
but
Right.
you're helping them. And that's a mentality you would see that a lot of Asian parents have, that I am basically just helping my kids.
Okay. That's interesting.
And I think that kind of creates that scenario where when the student is doing something unethical in class, they think that I'm just, you know, I'm helping myself or whatever, right?
Well, and like you said, the whole
Sadly.
excuse, they're justifying it as everybody else is doing it, so I need to do it too, or else I'll fall behind. And yeah, I mean, I hate that logic, but yeah, that's the kind of the common notion that's out there. And then so many times too, or some of our colleagues or whatnot will think, well, they take an ethics class later. I don't need to focus on ethics in my class. And to me, in the business school, we all need to be doing something ethics related on our classes, whether it's, I mean, it could be as simple as a guest speaker or a video or just a lecture or a group activity. It's not like we need to do ethics every day in every class, but I think every course still needs to at least one day have some kind of ethics component in there as well. Hopefully we can all strive towards that. But
So Rusty, I have a carrot and stick approach with
Yeah.
that.
yep.
And it has worked so far since I have started at UNI, and I was teaching at University of Arkansas as well, and it tend to work. What I do is at the beginning of the semester, I talk about ethics, and I do spend about half hour, either
Right.
the first class or the second class of that first week. And what I say is, I give them the stick first. And I put it on me. I say that, look, if you cheat and I catch you, which I will, okay, somehow, either through a statistical means or there are cameras in the classroom, whatever that is, or I just know because 5 students are saying the same thing, I know
Right.
you cheated.
Yeah.
When I find that out, I am obligated to report that. And now you're putting me in a tough position because you are my student. And now we have to go through this hassle. And sometimes I say, look, I mean, come on, now I have to go all the way to the provost, writing papers after papers after
Yep.
papers. That's
Yep.
just not productive. So don't make me do that. So I said that please don't make me go through this, because that's just not productive, because you want me to teach. You don't want me to be yelling at you and writing bad things
Exactly.
about you. So that's kind of my stick. And then I give a little bit of carrot. I say that, look, if you're honest about an exam and if you did bad, come and talk to me. If you are not prepared at all to take an exam and you have a fit right before the exam, come and talk to me. Instead of cheating, you better come to me. Maybe I'll give you more time. Maybe I'll give you a couple of days or a week to take the exam. We'll come up with some sort of different alternative where I can assess you fairly, but you don't go there rushed and feel like you have to cheat. So
Okay.
that's the carrot. The other carrot I give them in the long term, that is I tell them, look, you may get in the door with your interviews, but as soon as you get in the interview door, your GPA doesn't matter anymore. You have to be able to present yourself
Sure.
with everything that you know. And if you do not know and you cheated your way through,
It will be very obvious.
it would be obvious, right? Like for my management 2080 students, I tell them, look, if you don't know computer, like yesterday I was having this conversation because we were reviewing for the first exam.
Yeah.
So what's a computer? Or what's a database? And they say, oh, database is where we put data. Database is where we put data. So it shows that you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
And then in the exam, you say all these nice things. And the first thing they ask you, so have you used database in your life? How can you make a database efficient? And you are thinking, what's the database?
Yeah.
So So you will get caught.
Yes, I
It's
agree.
better to be thinking long-term and saying, you know what, maybe I will get a B minus,
Yeah.
but I won't cheat my way through because it will catch me.
Well,
Today,
as bad as that bad grade would be if they get caught cheating now, like you said, that's much less harsh than when they get busted in the workplace later for not knowing anything that they should have learned in college.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I
agree.
also tell them that, look, we are more sympathetic to you guys because you guys are like our children. But that is very different in the corporate world. The corporate
Right.
world is brutal. Let's say you take a report of your colleague and try to present it that way, taking their thoughts, even just thoughts. Somebody said some ideas to you in the coffee room, and
Right.
you go to your boss and you say, "Oh, that's my idea." That's cheating. That's unethical. That's what the classic plagiarism in corporate world. You will get fired.
Yep.
You will get fired as soon as they find out, and that's a significant loss of life that you have to understand. So I try that. I could be proud to say that I haven't found anybody cheating in my class yet, but it may be just that I'm not that good at finding out.
Well, I think sometimes the students are able to outsmart us in some of these things.
Oh, I'm pretty sure
but
about
sometimes they make it very obvious that they're cheating, which is helpful as well for us. But yeah, I mean, I think every year they get a little better at some of the things they're trying that might.
And there are resources, Rusty, unfortunately.
Yeah.
There are resources. I never heard of some of those, and amazingly, there are websites that you can find keys and stuff. And
yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, we need to leave it up to the individual. I think that's what the biggest thing I believe, because look, ethics is, and again, I hate to bring politics into it, but I think recently we have seen unethical maneuvering at the highest level of government.
Sure.
And what happens is, why that happened? Why did that happen? Because some people just didn't do their fair share of work and got to that level. They don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And therefore,
you could probably say that's on both sides of the political spectrum.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
again, absolutely. Yeah. And this whole thing, but this is, you see a trend, at least for last 20, 30, well, maybe starting with Nixon, I would say.
Sure.
But, you know, you see that from that time, you see that there is this trend of unethical behavior.
Right.
And people tend to think that it's okay. They somehow justify it.
Yeah.
Again, I'm saying, to be fair, it's on both aisle of the political spectrum. But there is, and how did that happen? How did we get there at that highest level? Because I'm pretty sure that they cheated their way through when they were in school, when they were in college.
I'm sure it didn't just start one day later in life.
Well, exactly, like when you become like, you know, secretary of X and Y, you just didn't start cheating or becoming or showing unethical attitude that day. Yes. Yes,
and it's everywhere. I mean, business world, politics, sports, religion, there's no aspect of life where we can't pick up a newspaper on a daily basis and see tons of examples of things going on out there. And that's oops, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I meant to say that's why I appreciate these conversations. I think that ethics, somehow we pushed it behind. Somehow we pushed this topic behind, and we don't talk about this enough.
Yeah.
I think like, for instance, my Management 2080, I strongly think that there should be at least one chapter, a dedicated week that we talk about ethics.
Right.
When we have seniors in our classes, I think we should give them at least another week of ethics training, because they're just getting ready to go to workplace.
Sure.
We need to have that beginning and ending process, which we are not doing.
Right.
And we see rampant ethical issues all over our society.
Yeah, very much so. And only getting worse, apparently. At least it seems that way. Students will often ask if I think ethics are worse now than like when I was in school 20 or 25 years ago. And I'm a little bit torn on that question. I mean, I don't know that people are necessarily more unethical today, or if it's just that we know about things so much quicker now, whether that's social media or whatever, we know about everything that's going on. And so it's much more in the news, I guess, but I'm not sure people are necessarily more unethical today than they were 20 years ago, but who knows? Any thoughts on that?
I think you are at least 50% right, that we have more exposure.
That's a failing grade. I don't want a 50%.
I'm sorry, because I don't know. I don't know whether we became more unethical today than than we were before? It's a very fair question. I don't have the answer, but certainly I can attest to this idea that we have more exposure. So
Right.
20 years ago, we didn't have Facebook. Or even if I think we did have Facebook just starting or something.
Starting maybe, yeah.
But now what you have is every person is expressing themselves on the internet, and there is 6 billion people reading, which means that, and people tend to kind of say the things that they would not say it in an office setting or a classroom, but they are saying a lot of unethical stuff on Facebook. How can you kill people and feel that it's okay to, just live broadcast on Facebook?
Right.
So definitely some of this medium has encouraged, or at least I would take your word, exposed our unethical. People killed hundreds and thousands of years ago, and they continue to do that. But somehow it is getting exposed because now they're broadcasting live on Facebook. So yes, I think at least, no, not a failing grade, but at least I think at least there is a 50-50 chance that we are exposing them more than we used to before. But yes, I think that, but one of the things I have, and I was looking at some of the questions you asked, that are there any relevant real world business ethic examples or dilemmas?
What I was going to bring up next. So yeah, feel free.
Okay. So this is so relevant because I was just talking about intellectual copyrights and intellectual rights and property rights and stuff yesterday in my class. And I said that, as a business student, you guys need to be aware of intellectual property rights. And I asked my students, I said, how many of you can say, I never watched a pirated movie? 2 hands, right? Out of 44. And they were honest. And I did not record the class to show who did and who didn't. But I'm saying that it's an honest opinion, expression that they did. But that shows that everybody is guilty of watching a pirated movie at some point in their life. So I say to my students, I said, look, guys, you guys are business students, which means that your name will not be on that mouse, right? Your name will, and I showed them my cup. I said, your name will not be on this cup, but you may have spent significant amount of time, energy, and intelligence to design this.
Sure.
So what I'm trying to say is that you as business students, the only thing you produce is intellectual property. And if you are not respecting somebody's intellectual property today, and you are being unethical, right? How would you feel when you start producing, your company start producing, and you don't get paid for that?
Yeah. I have to chuckle. You're asking about the pirated movie. I can honestly say I've never done that, but part of the reason is because my wife pays for every streaming service there is. We have all of them. So I don't know why. We don't have time to watch that many movies, but we have all the streaming services.
We got Disney Plus a few months ago. My daughter herself told me, get rid of it for a couple of months until winter break, because we were spending, she's in front of it too much. She's like, Daddy, you got to get rid of it. And I admire that fact because, she's
I thought she meant you were spending too much time on it.
No, thankfully this semester I'm trying, Rusty, to get back to research and stuff. So, and Disney Plus, unfortunately, or fortunately, I have watched all the Disney movies anyway. Already. So yeah, I have watched all those Avengers movies and everything. So and I watched them in theaters as they came out. So Disney is something we grew up with, right? So so I have watched all of them. My daughter has not. So she has more to watch than I do.
Well, that's good though that she wants it to go away for a few months so she can focus on other things.
I really appreciate it, Rusty.
Like
I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Yeah, I agree. You're doing something right with her. I like that. Yeah.
Right.
What else on ethics do you feel like talking about today?
I think that summary point of view, I think that we just need to bring this center and front. I think that's what I would conclude with, is that we need to talk more about ethics and not talk less about ethics.
Exactly.
I think the business world is becoming more and more unethical. Let me give you
Sure.
my
Please.
personal example.
Yeah.
So I was in corporate, right? You know that I worked
Yep.
several years
Yep.
in the DC metro area. And I was pretty quick about climbing up the ladder. Thankfully, I worked hard and I was lucky enough to find those opportunities. But as soon as I become the director of IT, that's where it stopped. After that, this was supposed to be either become the CIO or, the VP of IT
Sure.
or something.
Yes.
What I found out is that at that time, my chief operations officer or the chief financial officers and the president and everybody's like, Saif, come with us, have cigar. We have a box seat to watch this game tonight. Are you coming? And I realized that becoming the CIO was more about socializing with my senior partners
Sure.
and executives.
Yep.
And it was perceived as my contribution.
Okay. That's
which is
interesting.
sad.
It is.
And the
yeah.
reason I kind of left, because that was around the time when my daughter was born. So I
Okay.
wanted to go home. And my point was, I love to watch or play golf. But the
Okay.
point is, it is more exciting to hold my new baby. I have given my fair share of work at work. Before 9 p.m., I'm okay. If you tell me that I have to be there until 8 o'clock, I did there. I stayed there. I had meetings sometime. I had about 4 teams. Few of them were in India. There were a few in, I believe, somewhere in the Asian subcontinent. I forgot exactly where it was. There was a team in California. I was there with my own team in the DC metro area, in Maryland, to be exact. So I was managing teams, and a lot of times I was having like 2 a.m. meetings, 3 a.m. meetings, because the team in India, I did that before I got married.
Right.
But I did my share because I thought it was important to the company. I was young, I was energetic, and I was not married. So I thought that was okay. And I wanted my company to grow. It was a mid-sized company, so I wanted it to grow.
Right.
And definitely I did the right thing, because within 5 years, I made from a business analyst to all the way to the IT director.
Okay.
I did not make it that quickly if I didn't do the hard work.
Absolutely. Very true.
But this is where it stopped. Why couldn't I become the CIO by working and planning and, also having a family life?
Right. Right.
But it was more about, now you got to socialize with us. You have to be us. You have to be one of us to become and have that C in front of your name.
Okay.
That's unethical.
Yeah, there's a lot of concerns about something
right?
like that. Kind of that old boys network, quote unquote.
The old boys, and that was the old boys network.
Okay.
That was the old boys network. There was one lady, and they left her at the controller level, but they would not make her the CFO, of course.
Okay.
So that's the thing that I found out, right? So that's very unethical.
Yeah.
And if you think about
both.
going into even just the basics of how much money, the big gap that we have between a regular worker and CEO and the C levels, that's again another ethical issue that we tend to ignore in today's society. It almost normalized. We think that it's acceptable. It's okay. Right. Oh, they do so much hard work. And of course, they do this, but if you really watch them, they don't. Right. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then another thing I'll share with you from my personal life is during the pandemic, not the pandemic, the Great Recession, if you remember, in the 2008-2009 crisis. The first, in my interview, when I wanted to be the CIO, the first question I got is that, who would you fire?
Wow.
Right?
As a former HR person, I don't like that question very much.
No. And I was stunned. No. I was like, are you kidding me? Are you telling me that that my promotion hinges on that question? But that has become also very acceptable norm, is that you become the new C-level position or the director. The best thing you do is you cut some workers so that you look good, you save money. And that has become very much acceptable And I found out that I was not the only one. There were many others, not at that time. Of course, they had some sort of justification saying, we are bleeding. Who can you lose so we can save some money? But here's my point. You are offering me about $400,000, $300,000 to become the CIO. And you are trying to cut off that one person for $35,000.
Right, exactly.
Why do you have to pay me $200,000+? Do you see what I'm saying? So,
Absolutely.
and again, that's a fallacy, because what you are creating the environment where saying we're saving $35,000 because we cut a position, but you are hiring a new CIO, which the previous CIO was gone. You are hiring a new CIO in the time of Great Recession, and you are putting 6 digits times 2.
Right. Absolutely.
Where is that justification? But there was.
Makes no
They
sense
thought
to
it
me
was
either.
completely acceptable to say it.
Right. Right.
So I quit. I gave them a 6 months notice. I gave them 6 months because I really liked the company, because
Sure.
that's where I started in about my 3rd year working and stuff. So I said, look, I have to go. I called my professors, actually. That was one of the things I still cherish, that I was in touch with my professors. So I reached out to them. I said, this is what's going on, what to do.
Yeah.
So one of my very dearest professors said, Saif, maybe it's time to join us.
I was going to
the
say,
academia.
it's time to become Dr. Saif.
So I went back, of course, that to Bangladesh to just teach for a few days and see that how it feels.
Yeah.
And then I basically left corporate. I'm not saying that everybody is corrupted. I'm not saying that everybody is
right.
unethical.
No, I understand.
But
that.
there is this attitude in the air and an acceptability. It's almost like it's not okay to smoke, but it's okay to drink. You know what I'm saying?
I understand. Yeah.
I don't think it's a very good example, but I'm sorry.
I know where you're going with it. We're fine.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, right. That's all I have.
Okay. Well, thank you.
I hope it wasn't too personal.
No, we're good. I appreciate your taking the time to do this. I know the students will enjoy these, colleagues, the community members, whoever watches these. I know hopefully there'll be some enjoyment from watching these and learning several things about us and our views on ethics as well. So thank you again for taking some time with me this afternoon. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.